I cheated with a boy 20 years younger. I kept a secret apartment just to cheat. My husband planned an ambush and left me in loneliness and sick. My name is Clara. I am 42 years old. I am an administrative manager at a logistics company, and outwardly, I have always been seen as that complete woman, a stable professional, married for almost 2 decades, 2 teenage children, and a house that looks like it came out of a magazine ad. But the truth is that this image of perfection suffocated me. Do you know that feeling of being alive but not really living? I woke up every day with the same routine, the same automatic smiles, and an emptiness that only grew, and I never had the courage to tell that to anyone, not even to Ramiro, my husband. Ramiro is 45 years old and is an executive at a metallurgical multinational. He was always a serious man, very proper, even methodical. He is the type who plans vacations 6 months in advance, organizes his accounts in spreadsheets, and gets angry if someone moves things. He was never bad to me, quite the contrary. He never betrayed me. He never raised his voice, always present as a father and partner. But he also never looked at me as a woman. In recent years, he treated me as if I were part of the furniture of the house, the reliable woman who would always be there, and I got used to being invisible. We met in college, we married young, and we spent our lives building something solid. We had 2 beautiful children, a comfortable home, stability, but we also had distance, much more than I realized. Life began to become automatic. He focused on work and his children. I divided myself between the office and managing the home. And time, that silent thief, stole the desire, the touch, the glances. I began to miss being desired, to be noticed, to have someone who would make me feel alive again. I tried to talk to Ramiro once or twice about how I felt excluded, but he did not understand. He told me that everything was fine, that it was a phase of our age, that maybe I was tired. Yes, I was tired, but of being ignored. Little by little, I fell silent. I began to hide my frustrations behind mechanical smiles, new clothes, and subtle changes in my hair. He did not notice any of it, and that was when the idea began to invade me. Am I still capable of arousing someone's interest? I started to pay more attention to the people around me. I watched how younger women received glances, compliments, and invitations. And I was someone's wife, a mother of 2 teenagers, no identity of my own. I started to dress up more, not for him, but for me. I wanted to test if I still had that power, and as useless as it may seem, this became a silent obsession. I wanted to see if anyone, would see me beyond my role as a tired wife. When I met Gail, this doubt turned into an answer. But before talking about him, I must say that I did not go into this thinking that everything was going to fall apart. I thought I was in control. I felt wronged, needy, deserving of something more, and it is this type of justification that we cling to when we are about to make decisions that will ruin everything. If you ask me today why I did what I did, I have 1,000 explanations but no real apology. I met Gail by chance one Saturday morning while waiting for a friend in a cafe near my work. He was the barista there. He was 22 years old, with an easy smile, tattoos on his arm, and a confidence I had not seen in any man in a long time, especially in me. When he jokingly called me charming lady, my first reaction was to laugh and say that I was already too old for that kind of thing, but inside, something clicked, a feeling I did not even remember what it was like. And that is where it all began. In the following days, I made excuses to go back there, a coffee before work, a croissant in the afternoon, anything to hear that voice, that compliment again. Gail started calling me by my name, asking me personal questions, remembering details that not even my husband would notice, and I fed on it as if I were starving. It was as if someone had turned on the light in a room where I had been locked up for years, and the worst part was, I knew it was dangerous, but I could no longer help it. I began to look forward to our meetings as if they were the highlight of my week. One day, he handed me a coffee with a note stuck to the cup. If I asked you out, would you accept? My heart raced. I should have torn it up immediately, but instead, I put the paper in my purse and looked at it in the work bathroom like a teenager. At night, Ramiro was in the living room working on his laptop when I sent a message to Gail. Maybe it was the first betrayal, not physical but emotional, and from then on, there was no turning back. We met the following week in a discreet bar. The kiss happened even before the first drink was finished. That kiss destroyed me and revived me at the same time. I was 42 years old with 2 children, a husband, a house, and there I was, kissing a 22-year-old boy as if it were the first time. We left there and went straight to a motel, still not believing what we were doing. We had sex for almost 3 hours. Gail put me in positions I had not tried in years and others I did not even know. I felt alive, hungry, amazed, like a 20-year-old girl rediscovering her own body. When it was finally over, I was exhausted, sweaty, with no strength to think. But after a shower together, he pulled me to him once more without warning. He used me as if I were only his. I arrived home completely exhausted, with disheveled hair and burning skin, but feeling satisfied as I had not felt in a long time. The lies started small. I said I would be late due to accumulated spreadsheets. Sometimes I invented short trips for work. Ramiro, as always, believed everything, and that made me worse. I saw how much he trusted me, and still I lied, looking him in the eyes. But at the same time, my head created excuses. He has been ignoring me for years. He does not care about me anymore. I deserve to be happy. Gail became my addiction, and like all addictions, the more I had, the more I needed. I was transforming, and I did not even realize it. When Gail suggested we rent a place of our own, my first impulse was to say no. It seemed too radical. But after thinking about it for a few nights, and after a dinner with Ramiro in which he spent more time on his phone than looking at me, I said yes. And so apartment 704 was born, a place of our own, a refuge, a time capsule. Inside, I was not a wife, I was not a mother, I was just Clara. And it was this woman I wanted to be more and more, even if it cost everything I had built up to that moment. After that day at the motel, I was no longer the same. I returned home to my role as a wife and mother, but my head remained there on Gail's body, on his muffled moans, on his hands that seemed to know exactly where to touch. It was like living in 2 dimensions. In the morning, I would make coffee for Ramiro and help the boys with their studies. In the afternoon, I was a wild, daring lover, a woman who allowed herself to live something she had repressed for so long. And this duality made me an addict. I lied more and more easily, as if I had discovered a hidden talent for hiding. It was on one of those afternoons that Gail told me, with that youthful tone, that he wanted a corner of our own. At first, I thought it was absurd, but then the idea kept spinning in my head. I was already lying, I was already cheating, and it was not like I was going to stop. On the contrary, I wanted more. I wanted freedom. I wanted to live this version of myself without having to make excuses all the time. So I rented apartment 704, a simple, very discreet flat in the city center. I changed the route of my days. It was our hideout, our nest, where I took off not only my clothes, but also my guilt. Inside, I was different. I dressed only for him, with new lingerie, different perfume, heels that Ramiro did not even know I had. In 704, I forgot about the bills, the dinner I had to prepare, the school meetings. I just wanted Gail to look at me the way he did, as if I were the most desired woman in the world. We had sex on the sofa, on the floor, in the bathroom, without any shame. It was sex with the intensity of revenge, as if I were making up for all the years I felt ignored. The encounters with Gail were so intense that sometimes I needed to have an energy drink before going home just to get my body and spirit back. I would leave there with my legs shaking, my private parts swollen from so much friction. The worst days were when I arrived and Ramiro, out of the blue, decided to seek me out in bed. And there I was, lying next to a man who thought he was making love to his wife while she was still recovering from wild afternoons with another. In those moments, I just closed my eyes and pretended. Pretending had already become my automatic mode. My relationship with my children also began to change. I was absent, distracted, impatient. I started making basic mistakes, forgetting to pick them up, forgetting to answer messages, forgetting to be a mother. Ramiro noticed, of course, but as always, he attributed it all to work stress. He even suggested therapy, which angered me. He had no idea that the therapy I was undergoing was in the hands and body of a boy who turned me upside down every week. The truth is that I was becoming a woman I no longer recognized, and at the same time, I loved being her. Even with all this fire, some things started to show warning signs. Gale was sometimes rude, too jealous. He wanted to know why I was taking so long, why I did not answer. There was one time he threw my cell phone when he saw a call from Ramiro, and instead of pulling away, I clung even more. I thought it was passion. I thought it was because he wanted me all to himself. I ignored the signs because I was anesthetized, and when we are addicted, even pain seems like pleasure. I was no longer just cheating on my husband, I was betraying myself. But what I did not know, or pretended not to know, was that my real life still existed, that outside of 704 there was an observant husband, needy children, a reputation at stake, and that all of it was hanging by a thread. The apartment, as much as it made me feel alive, was also the tomb of who I once was. I just did not know that that space I thought was my private paradise would soon become the stage for my worst nightmare. Over time, the blind passion began to give way to a strange tension. Gale, who was once affectionate and charming, began to show a more controlling side. He meddled with everything, my clothes, my schedule, and even if I answered a message late. He said he loved me, but he hated sharing me. Sometimes during sex, he would squeeze too hard. He would say things like, "You are mine," with an intensity that went from erotic to terrifying. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just silly jealousy, but it started to make me nervous. For the first time, I realized I had no control over the situation. Meanwhile, at home, Ramiro started to seem less distant than I had imagined. One night, he looked at me differently, not with anger, but with silent distrust. He asked me why I was so distant, if there was someone else. I laughed, turned around, and hugged him, telling him it was just work stress, but inside, I panicked. I felt discovered, even without proof. From then on, he started to notice more. He started to ask me more frequently where I was, why I was late, who I was talking to. Every day I lied better, but constant lying wears down the soul. There was a day that Ramiro called the office and I was not there. I made up that I was in an external meeting, but my heart was pounding like a drum. When I got home, he did not say anything, but I knew. I knew he was connecting the dots. That same week, Gale threw a tantrum when I arrived 20 minutes late. He threw my coat on the floor and said I treated him like a toy. And instead of confronting him, I apologized. I felt guilty for cheating on my husband and also for disappointing my lover. It was an impossible knot to untie. My life began to fall apart in small doses. I was always tired, sleeping poorly, always tense. My children complained that I no longer paid attention to them. Ramiro looked at me like someone trying to decipher a code. And Gale, increasingly aggressive, began to engage in emotional blackmail. He said that if I did not leave everything to be with him, he would disappear, and that made me panic because, despite everything, I did not want to lose Gale, but I also did not want to throw away my whole life. I thought I could keep everything in balance, but everything was already falling apart. There was one particular day that was the beginning of the end. I left my cell phone on silent mode while I was with Gale in 704. When I left, there were 17 missed calls from Ramiro. He was desperate, thinking something had happened. When I got home, he was pale. He said he almost went to the police. He hugged me tightly, and all I could think about was how fake I was. That gnawed at me. For a few days, I tried to stay away from Gale, but all it took was one message from him for me to come running back. I was no longer my own master. I was a hostage to that addiction, to that adrenaline, to that escape. The final straw came in a slip-up. I forgot a small gold earring on the headboard of 704, one that Ramiro had given me years ago for a birthday. Gale found the earring, handed it to me with disdain, and asked if it was a gift from my husband. He laughed, mocked me, said I was a divided woman, and at that moment, I did not know what to say because it was true. I was divided between two worlds that were colliding, and when these worlds collided for good, I knew I was the one who was going to break into pieces. It was a normal afternoon. Gale sent me a message saying he missed me and wanted to see me. Even though I was tired, I accepted immediately. I arranged to meet him at 704, as always. I quickly got ready. I put on new lingerie, I put on that sweet perfume that he loved, and I made up one more excuse at work. When I entered the apartment, everything seemed normal. Soft light, familiar smell, comfortable silence. But when I opened the bedroom door, my world collapsed. There was Ramiro. Standing next to him were my two children, my mother-in-law, and worse, Gail, already waiting too. I froze. That is the word. I just froze. I stood in the doorway with my purse still on my shoulder and my mouth half open. I looked at my children and saw the horror in their eyes. My daughter was crying. My teenage son was clenching his fists. Ramiro had a tablet in his hands and an expression on his face that I had never seen before, a dead, silent look, a kind of pain that does not scream but crushes. He looked at me and said, "Watch this," and pressed play on the tablet. Images of me entering and leaving 704, voice recordings, printouts of messages with Gail, a real dossier. I wanted to run, disappear, hide under the floor, but there everything was exposed. Gail tried to play it down. He laughed and said it was a thing for frustrated people, but no one was laughing. Ramiro remained calm, cold, as if he had already cried all he needed to. He did not curse me, he did not hit me, he did not humiliate me with words, but the way he looked at me, it was as if I had died for him. And maybe I had. My mother-in-law, always polite to me, shook her head. And my children did not say a word, they just looked at me like someone looks at a stranger. Ramiro turned to Gail and said, "You are just another silly boy." But she was my wife. Then he turned to me and added, "You chose this. Now you will have to live with it." He took the children, turned his back, and left. No screams, no scandal, just the sound of the door closing behind them. Only later did I find out how it all happened. Ramiro discovered everything with the help of a detective, and when he was sure, he went to Gail accompanied by his brother. The two of them beat him up, not enough to break bones but enough to make a point. Then, under threat, they forced Gail to arrange that meeting with me at 704. Everything was set up. In the following days, Ramiro disappeared. He blocked my number. He left home with the children. He went to his mother's house. My children refused any contact. The messages I sent went unanswered. At the company, the rumor spread. Someone had recorded the audio of the scene. Colleagues started looking at me sideways. Gail also disappeared after the scene at 704. He never looked for me again. He said he did not want family drama, and I was left with all the drama alone. 704, which was once my refuge, became an emotional tomb. I could not set foot in there anymore. At the end of that week, I went in there just to pick up my things. Every corner smelled of guilt. The mark of desire turned to ruin. I sat on the living room floor and stayed there for hours in silence. I did not know where to go, who to look for, what to do. For the first time, I felt truly lost. No husband, no children, no lover, no dignity. The woman who thought she was living a liberating adventure was now just a humiliated traitor. And the bill for all that had not even arrived yet. After the ambush at 704, my life turned to ashes. I left the house where we lived without even being able to say goodbye to my children. The first few days, I went to a hotel, completely disoriented. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, reliving every detail of that scene, my children crying, the look of disgust from my mother-in-law, the coldness of the man who loved me for 20 years. Apartment 704, which was once my secret paradise, was now a scene of trauma. I could still hear the deathly silence of that moment. It was as if my world had been swallowed by a black hole. Gail still came to see me 2 or 3 more times. I, humiliated and needy, accepted. He treated me like a street woman, full of anger, as if using a prostitute and throwing her away, using me with intensity until I was tired and then treating me with disdain. The meetings were cold, empty, as if he wanted to prove he could still have me. The desire had become something mechanical, almost pathetic. He no longer looked at me as before. He touched me hastily, as if he were angry or bored. And still, I clung to him like someone clinging to a branch in the middle of a shipwreck. Deep down, I knew I did not want Gale. I just did not want to be alone. But that is exactly where I was headed. Shortly after these last encounters, he disappeared. He shut down his social networks, changed his number. I found out through third parties that a younger girl got pregnant, a 19-year-old student. They say he tried to come out, but her family wanted nothing to do with him. I, once again, was discarded, used, deceived. The woman who thought she was special, who felt desired, was now just another name in his story. I felt rage, shame, and above all, an absurd emptiness. It was as if I had given everything and ended up with nothing. No love, no family, no lover, no respect. At work, the bomb also exploded. Someone who knew Ramiro spread the story. I was called to talk to management. I received a warning and was moved to another sector, and I lost my management position. Colleagues looked at me crookedly and whispered. I lost important contracts. My days became a cycle of uncomfortable silence and awkward meetings. All I wanted was to disappear. I did not spend a night without crying. I woke up and slept with a weight on my chest, and the worst of it all was knowing that the fault was mine alone, no one else's. I dug that hole with my own hands. I tried to send letters to my children. I apologized. I begged for a chance. No response. I tried to contact Ramiro. I sent him long, sincere audios full of regret. Nothing. Blocked on everything. My mother-in-law even answered one of my calls and just told me, "You destroyed everything. Do not look for my grandchildren anymore," and hung up. The feeling of loss was physical. It was like a pain that settled in the bones, that weighed on the shoulders, that stole the air. The betrayal did not end on the day of the exposure. It continued to punish me with daily installments of contempt and loneliness. I moved to a small apartment far from everything, a place with no history, no past. I started living in automatic mode. Wake up, work, come back, drink cheap wine, cry, sleep. No one cared. No one asked how I was. The woman who once had a family, respect, and stability was now just a shadow. I tried to convince myself that someday things would get better, but deep down, I knew that some losses are permanent and that I would never get that one back. The months went by, and the loneliness began to make me sick in a way I could not explain. First came the constant fatigue, then joint pain, insomnia, and a feeling of malaise that no medicine could solve. I went to the doctor, thinking it was just stress, maybe depression. But after a series of tests, the diagnosis came: a rare autoimmune disease that affects the nervous and muscular system. The doctor said it could be managed, but that progress depended on my emotions. I smiled on the outside. On the inside, I knew my soul was rotten. It was as if my own body was punishing me. I started treatment, but everything was slow, exhausting, and lonely. I did not have the energy to even get out of bed. On bad days, I could barely open a bottle of water, and yet I forced myself to go to work, pretend everything was fine, use makeup to hide the dark circles and swollen eyes. No one there really cared. I became invisible at the office. The once respected manager became the gossip, the traitor to her executive husband. And the worst part was knowing that it was not an exaggeration, it was simply the exact consequence of the decisions I made. I started having memories of 704 with a mixture of disgust and longing. Sometimes I dreamed of Gale, other times of my children's eyes looking at me with disappointment. Every time I closed my eyes, I went back to one of those scenes, and I kept asking myself, where did I get lost? At what point did I stop being a decent woman to become this? I started writing letters that I never sent, requests for forgiveness, explanations, ridiculous justifications. I just wanted to talk to someone, to say I was sorry, that I was sick, that I could not take it anymore. But no one wanted to listen. On my 43rd birthday, I waited until midnight, staring at my cell phone. No messages, not a notification, not even a happy birthday from my children. I cried like a child. I opened a bottle of wine alone and looked at old photos, family photos, Christmas, birthdays, trips. Ramiro with that serene smile, the boys laughing, me hugging them. That tore me apart inside. It was like watching a movie of a life that was no longer mine. And all for what? For a few orgasms with a boy who disappeared without a trace? Was it worth it? I did not know anymore. The nights became a mental battlefield. I thought about writing an email to Ramiro, telling him about the illness. I even thought about looking for my mother-in-law and begging her to deliver a letter to me. But something always stopped me. Pride, pity, fear of rejection, maybe all of them together. The fact is that I was dying, little by little, day after day, inside that cold apartment. My strength was disappearing, and with it, hope. I no longer thought I could rebuild anything. I just wanted to ease the pain, and not even the medications were working. Today, I live with a silent routine. I wake up, take my medicine, try to eat, go to work, come back. I have no more plans, no faith, no dreams. Only memories, pain, and a constant weight on my chest. The disease did not destroy me. I was already destroyed when it arrived. It just completed the job. It was the external reflection of the internal rot that I had cultivated for so long. My body became the mirror of my guilt, and there is no doctor, prayer, or time that can fix what broke inside me. The first time I saw a picture of Ramiro after everything was by chance. An old friend of ours from college who still followed me online liked a picture of him on a trip with his children. The three of them were in front of a beautiful landscape, smiling. The boys looked happy. Ramiro was tan, with a thicker beard, and there was something in his eyes that broke me inside. Lightness. It was the look of someone who is at peace. He had rebuilt his life without me, and that was like a stab. I was shattered, sick, alone. He was renewed, moving forward. With time, other pictures began to appear. I saw that he moved with his children to another city, new school, new home, new routine. In all the pictures, they were smiling. Apparently, Ramiro requested a transfer to an international unit of the company, a new role, more autonomy. And I watched everything, hidden from a fake profile, crying every time I clicked. Until one day, I saw something that took my breath away. He posted a photo hugging a woman, young, beautiful, with a serene air. The boys were with her. Everyone looked fine. In the caption, he wrote, "Some storms come to clear the way." That killed me. I knew it was for me. Ramiro was always sober, discreet. He did not make these kinds of posts in vain. It was there that I realized this was his revenge. Not to shout, not to expose me, not to threaten me, but to erase me, to replace me with class, showing me in silence that he was able to move on while I was sinking. And it worked, because seeing his new world, a world in which I no longer existed, hurt more than any slap. I became obsessed. I started looking at everything, the photos, the comments, the likes. I saw that his new wife was a child psychologist, that she had 2 brothers, that she cooked well, that the boys called her by her name in the comments. My heart sank more with each post. A part of me wanted to hate her, but the other part knew she was not guilty of anything. Ramiro had moved on with someone who probably valued him, who did not betray him, who did not lie. And that made me see the size of my loss. In a fit of desperation, I wrote a letter, long, honest, full of pain. I told him about the illness, about the regret, about everything. I asked him to at least let me see the boys. I sent it by mail with a receipt confirmation. 2 weeks later, I received the sealed envelope back without it ever having been opened. That was the end, confirmation that for him, I was not even worthy of being heard. And as much as I believe I deserved it, it hurts, because loving someone who erases you is a cruel punishment, one that does not leave marks on the body, but corrodes the soul. Ramiro never cursed me. He never threw anything in my face. He simply excluded me. I disappeared from his world, and he moved on as if I had never existed. This was his revenge, not bloody, not dramatic, but definitive. He won. And I watched it all from the back seat with a sick body and a broken heart, with no right of reply, no defense, with no one by my side. And now I understand. He did not need to punish me directly. Fate was already taking care of that much better than he could. The silence here in my house is not peace, it is a punishment. It is the echo of the decisions I made. There are no pictures on the wall. No sound of people is heard. Sometimes I leave the television on just to hear some noise other than my own breathing. I became a shadow of the woman I once was. The reflection in the mirror looks like someone else's. Dull eyes, tired body, soul in ruins. Not a day goes by that I do not think about my children, about what they feel, about what they think, about what they say about me. I wonder if they are still angry or if they have already forgotten me. I try to remember the last time they called me Mom, and I cannot. My memories with them have become distant movies that I watch on a loop with great regret. I never saw them in person again after that. I was not invited to birthdays, graduations, or anything. I became a ghost. And worst of all is that they are right. I failed them with Ramiro, with myself. My health is deteriorating, slowly but surely. The doctors say it is a long but possible battle, but I no longer have the strength to fight. I do not want to die, but I do not have any real reason to live either. Everything I loved was left behind, burned by a flame that I myself lit. Sometimes I think about writing all this in a diary or recording videos as a kind of atonement. Other times, I just lie on the living room floor and remain silent. There is no one who visits me. No one cares. I became irrelevant in the world that was once mine. Today, I understand that the greatest punishment did not come from the revealed betrayal or the abandonment. The real punishment was losing the respect of those who mattered most, seeing love turn into revulsion, seeing my children look at me with disgust, seeing the man who once looked at me with such affection turn his back on me forever. It is living with the certainty that what I threw away will never come back and that no one will ever look at me the way Ramiro once did. Yes, this is a kind of death in life. I am afraid of the future because I see nothing in it. Without a new beginning, there is no hope, only the weight of what has already passed. I do not wish harm on anyone, not Gail, not Ramiro's new wife. I just wish everything had been different, that I had asked for help instead of seeking pleasure, that I had valued what I had. I wish I had remembered that love does not have to be explosive to be true. But now it is too late. The only thing I can do is carry this cross, day after day, remembering what I lost and who I stopped being. If you have come this far, maybe you are judging me, perhaps rightly so. I would have done the same. But I hope, in some way, that this story will be of use to someone. Do not waste love just because it seems lukewarm. Do not trade respect for excitement. Think, too, 3 times before destroying what took years to build, because pleasure passes, the ego inflates and deflates, but regret, that remains. And sometimes it lasts forever.